Roses are red, violets are blue. Both smell sweet, unlike Pepe Le Pew. Bugs and Daffy will be right back.
Coming up next, it's Samurai Jack, followed by Justice League on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Ed, Ed, and Eddie on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Tom and Jerry, followed by Sitting Ducks on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Rocky and Bullwinkle Show on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Batman, followed by The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest on Cartoon Network.
Courage the Cowardly Dog, the ever-reluctant watchdog returns on Cartoon Network.
Scooby-Doo and the gang went chasing a werewolf. I'll be hiding in the Mystery Machine if you need me.
All aboard! There's more Cartoon Network on the way.
You're watching Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Acme Hour, followed by Cow and Chicken on Cartoon Network.
These guys can't win for losing. The Eds are back.
Coming up next, it's Super Chunk, followed by Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Animaniacs, followed by the Cartoon Show on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Tex Avery Show, followed by the Cartoon Show on Cartoon Network.
Now back to Bugs and Daffy on Cartoon Network.
And now Double D removes his hat.
Made you look! Elmer, you've been boiling that pot of vegetables all day. Let's just forget about the rabbit, throw in some tofu and eat. I'm hungry!
We're back. Let the chase begin.
Coming up next, it's Cow and Chicken, followed by Ed, Ed, and Eddie on Cartoon Network.
Dee Dee will never have the intellect to appreciate it, but Dexter's Laboratories.
Coming up next, it's more Baby Looney Tunes, followed by Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries on Cartoon Network. And now back to Tom and Jerry.
I have yet to make my greatest discovery. Why my mother never takes off her gloves. Dexter's Laboratory will return.
Coming up next, it's Baby Looney Tunes, followed by Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries on Cartoon Network.
Bravo is back, baby, and better than ever.
Coming up next, it's the Flintstones, followed by Bugs and Daffy on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Scooby-Doo, followed by the Rocky and Bullwinkle Show on Cartoon Network. You are watching Tom and Jerry Kids on Cartoon Network.
right back with Cow and Chicken.
You're watching Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network.
Boris and Natasha are nasty, but they call each other darling, and that's just sweet.
Coming up next, it's the Powerpuff Girls, followed by the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy on Cartoon Network.
Now back to the Jetsons, right here on Cartoon Network.
Si te gusta la carne, pon atención. La vaca y el pollito están de vuelta por Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Jabberjaw, followed by the Banana Splits on Cartoon Network.
Stick around. The SWAT Cats will return to kick more tail.
Unite! Take back what's yours! The filth, the cheese! Viva Vermin!
Coming up next, it's the Bugs and Daffy Show on Cartoon Network.
Dog makeovers! Next, Scooby Movies!
We'll be right back with Dexter's Laboratory.
Stay tuned. More Jetsons are headed your way. And the way George is driving, you might want to take cover.
Dexter's back. I think that breath of fresh air did him some good.
You're watching Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network. All aboard! There's more Cartoon Network on the way. Tom and Jerry need to get out of the house more. It seems they're really getting tired of each other.
Canker girls have got a real mean streak in them. And speaking of streak, it's a long run home from that pond, boys! The Eds will be right back.
Coming up next, it's the Powerpuff Girls, followed by I Am Weasel on Cartoon Network.
Save the day, girls! Like they need a reminder.
You're watching the Super Friends on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Batman, followed by Animaniacs on Cartoon Network.
Welcome back to Scooby-Doo. I think this is the one where there's a bad guy in a mask.
Now, back to the action.
Keep your clothes on. It's time for a real show.
Captain Planet is back. Gaia will be pleased.
We'll return with more Daphne the Vampire Slayer. Hey, she was doing it first. Coming up next, it's the Tex Avery Show, followed by Toonheads on Cartoon Network. Now back to the Warner Brothers and Warner's sister. We'll return with more of the Bugs and Daffy Show right here on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's more Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Followed by the Flintstones on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Batman, followed by Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? On Cartoon Network.
One genius plus one idiot equals, well, one genius and one idiot. Animaniacs will be right back.
Sylvester, you ingenious... Oh! Back to the show.
Tom and Jerry are back. Tom's the cat. But you knew that, didn't you?
Jetsons are back. Some kids had stopped up the elevator tube. Real funny.
Yes, this little weasel's feeling pretty good.
How does Cow eat those cookies? Cream first.
We now return to Ed, and Eddie. You're on Cartoon Network.
The Powerpuff Girls are all hard. Look out for this one, though. She's a little firecracker.
Now back to Scooby-Doo on the jinkiest place on Earth, Cartoon Network.
Now, back to the Dark Knight. Now, back to Batman.
Now back to the chicken and the cow.
And now back to Mike, Lou, and Oz on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Alvin and the Chipmunks, followed by a pup named Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
You can't elude justice. Batman is back on Cartoon Network.
Two Stupid Dogs will be right back on Cartoon Network.
There is slime, but that Dee Dee, sublime.
Scooby-Doo, it's all smoke, mirrors, and a projector. You're watching Cartoon Network. Plucky Duck was offered lots of money to say Tiny Toons will be right back. But since I just said it myself, Cartoon Network sees no need to pay Plucky after all. Sorry, pal.
I know it's late, but that's okay. Moose and squirrel aren't nocturnal creatures. I swear.
It's your night. Take back what's yours. The filth, the cheese. Viva Vermin.
Johnny Bravo ya está de vuelta por Cartoon Network.
La función debe continuar. Estamos de vuelta.
You're watching Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, stupid dog. We're back.
Coming up next, it's Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network.
Hey, here Here are two kids enjoying a hearty snack. Let's listen in.
My massive intellect predicts Dexter is back on Cartoon Network.
And now back to the tale of spiritual awakening that is Tom and Jerry.
Coming up next, it's the Flintstones, followed by Bugs and Daffy on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Scooby-Doo, followed by the What a Cartoon Show on Cartoon Network.
You're watching a pup named Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Grim and Evil on Cartoon Network. And now back to Dexter's Laboratory.
Coming up next, it's more Mysteries, Inc., followed by Tasmania on Cartoon Network. You're watching The Flintstones on Cartoon Network. You are watching Tiny Toons, only on Cartoon Network. So please, stay tuned. Thank you.
Coming up next, it's Courage the Cowardly Dog, followed by the Powerpuff Girls on Cartoon Network.
Scooby-Doo, it's all smoke, mirrors, and a projector.
Now back to the show. Do you see how your patience paid off?
We'll be back with the world's most brilliant inventor, Dexter. Of course, I guess I'm a little biased.
Coming up next, it's Sitting Ducks, followed by Hamtaro on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Ed, Edd and Eddy, followed by the Powerpuff Girls on Cartoon Network. We'll be right back with Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Whatever you do, Didi, do not push that button. It will bring this show to a halt. Didi!
When it comes to courting the ladies, no one can stop Johnny. Except for this lady right here. Johnny Bravo will return.
He's tough, cunning, and a little terrifying. It's a good thing he's working on the side of justice. The Dark Knight will be right back.
I love ribs too, Fred, but not so much that I'd let a big rib tip my car over. I mean, how much have you spent on body work so far?
Stick around. Tom had to run out for some ointment. Funny word, ointment. Ointment. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Tom and Jerry will be right back.
En instantes. Tom y Jerry, seguido por los Picapiedras.
And now back to Ed, Edd and Eddy.
Now back to more Weirdo Science with Dexter.
Welcome back. What is that, Shaggy? Pastrami?
Now back to the blockbuster that is a Scooby movie.
What if Bugs had never met Daffy? Elmer might have turned out all right after all. Nah.
Tom and Jerry are back with a vengeance.
You're watching The Rocky and Bullwinkle Show on Cartoon Network.
En instantes, Goofy, seguido por Bugs Bunny y el Pato Lucas.
Coming up next, it's the Looney Tunes Show on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Gumby, followed by Hong Kong Phooey on Cartoon Network.
You're watching Batman on Cartoon Network.
What? Another commercial? I shall invent an alternative to our shell of capitalist society. But what's in it for me?
Don't worry, pal. You've got those monsters right where you want them. We'll return to Courage the Cowardly Dog on Cartoon Network.
Cow and chicken are back, and they're just ruining their dinner.
Coming up next, it's the Flintstones, followed by Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Super Globetrotters, followed by Jabberjaw on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Max Steel on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Ed, Ed, and Eddie, followed by Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
You're watching Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
Now, back to the Radical Squadron on Cartoon Network.
Now back to the show. Do you see how your patience paid off?
You're watching Top Cat on Cartoon Network.
And now back to Freakazoid.
Yo, you are watching Cow and Chicken on Cartoon Network. Yeah.
We'll be right back after these messages. You're watching Yogi Bear on Cartoon Network. Houston, we have liftoff. Houston, we may also have a problem.
And now back to Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Take your partner by his wings, pick him up, do-si-do, throw him at the screen. He'll land right there on his neck, battle him, do-si-do. We'll be right back.
Footprints, a werewolf costume, and bags of money. This could be a clue.
Coming up next, it's Courage the Cowardly Dog, followed by Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? On Cartoon Network.
Stick around. There might be a guest star dropping by, or pop singer playing a tune. Barney might even do that thing with his ears. The Flintstones will return.
¿Cómo siendo tan inteligente no diseñó un destructor de hermanas? Ya volvemos con más Dexter por Cartoon Network.
Oh, I bet Einstein was never interrupted with commercial breaks. Stay tuned. I will be back with more adventures.
Eep, hop, orc, and of course,
Ya va a ser hora de comer otra vez. Garfield está de vuelta.
Hey, when we come back, I got dibs on all the makeout scenes.
Wonder Twin powers activate. Form of a commercial break. Stay tuned. We'll be back.
Don't worry, guys. It's just a funhouse mirror. You're not that funny looking. Hibernate, schnibernate. There are picnic baskets to be had. I'd run for my life, too, if my pet had teeth the size of Dino's. Youch!
Careful with that mallet you're swinging, Tom. Do I look like Jerry Mouse to you? Jeez.
Estamos de vuelta con nuestro programa por Cartoon Network.
You're watching Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's codenamed Kids Next Door, followed by Courage the Cowardly Dog on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Tiny Toons, followed by Bugs and Daffy on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Tom and Jerry, followed by Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Jetsons, followed by Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network. Now back to more Tom and Jerry here on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's SWAT Cats, followed by Thundercats on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Scooby Movies, followed by Waynehead on Cartoon Network.
Hey, Dexter, do you know what my favorite part of your show is? The commercials!
That's right.
right, sir. Just hook up the cable TV to this trash can. Charge it to Officer Dibble.
We're back. Let the chase begin. Ah! It's that red glowing monster.
No, wait, it's just an angry farmer in an electric suit. Back to Scooby.
Coming up next, it's Courage the Cowardly Dog, followed by the Powerpuff Girls on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Captain Planet on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Mike, Blue, and Og, followed by Alvin and the Chipmunks on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Batman, followed by Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? On Cartoon Network.
Now remember, the left button is your acceleration and the right button folds your spaceship into a briefcase. You really want to be careful about that.
All aboard! There's more Cartoon Network on the way.
Sworn to serve and protect. The Powerpuff Girls return on Cartoon Network.
All aboard! There's more Cartoon Network on the way.
Coming up next, it's Justice League, followed by Hamtaro on Cartoon Network. And now, back to Johnny Bravo.
Don't touch that remote control. You'll fall right into Lex Luthor's trap. Stay tuned for more Super Friends on Cartoon Network.
Sure, Fred would like to take that ascot off once in a while, but the knot's too tight. He can't get the darn thing off. Scooby-Doo will be right back on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Flintstones, followed by the Tex Avery Show on Cartoon Network. You're watching Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Popeye, followed by Top Cat on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Tom and Jerry Kids, followed by Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network. Nap's over. Tom and Jerry are back on Cartoon Network. Pay for your snacks and come back from the lobby. Today's Scooby Movie is back.
Coming up next, it's Dexter's Laboratory, followed by Baby Looney Tunes on Cartoon Network.
Gathering more stacks of wisecracks, Animaniacs will be right back on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Acme Hour, followed by Animaniacs on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Codename Kids Next Door, followed by the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy on Cartoon Network.
Maybe you never will catch Gary, Tom, but on the bright side, millions of people are entertained by your failures. Hey, just trying to cheer you up.
Coming up next, it's Justice League, followed by Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Toonheads, followed by Bugs and Daffy on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Droopy, followed by Popeye on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Johnny Bravo, followed by Courage the Cowardly Dog on Cartoon Network.
Da-da-da-da-da, Scooby-Dooby-Doo, looking for you. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you?
Coming up next, it's the Powerpuff Girls, followed by Hamtaro on Cartoon Network.
We'll be right back to the local chapter of USDW, United Steel Dog Workers 109. Union Woof!
Tom and Jerry Kids.
We'll be right back with Tom and Jerry Kids.
Now back to Cow and Cookie. I mean, chicken.
Coming up next, it's Captain Planet, followed by Godzilla on Cartoon Network.
We'll be right back with Bugs and Daffy.
Coming up next, it's Superman, followed by Batman on Cartoon Network.
Get out of there! That's a boiling pot of soup, not a jacuzzi! Bugs and Daffy will be back. Coming up next, it's Scooby-Doo, followed by Johnny Bravo on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Powerpuff Girls on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Animaniacs on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Bugs and Daffy Show, followed by the Flintstones on Cartoon Network.
Okay, you two, break's over. Let's go. Back to work.
Mom, Dexter's performing weird experiments on my dollies again.
Making Pokey Oaks Elementary School proud. The Powerhouse Girls are back on Cartoon Network.
Must stay tuned for more Dexter. Study his weaknesses, so one day I, Mandorf, will rule his show.
You're watching Johnny Bravo on Cartoon Network.
Shaggy says, like, wow, man, like, back to the, like, show. You're watching Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Tasmania, followed by the Bugs and Daffy Show on Cartoon Network.
No one can really call Fred a man before his time because there weren't any. I mean, they were all apes, right? The Flintstones will be right back on Cartoon Network.
Back to cute, cuddly, concrete kids.
You're watching Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
Life is a game of cat and mouse. It is for
for Tom and Jerry, anyway. We'll be back.
Coming up next, it's Scooby-Doo, followed by the Flintstones on Cartoon Network.
Hey, Dexter, why the glove? Afraid of girl cooties? Cooties, cooties, cooties.
We'll return as soon as Tom regains consciousness.
Is there a doctor in the audience?
We'll be right back with Captain Planet.
En instantes, el laboratorio de Dexter, seguido por Garfield en Cartoon Network.
If you can build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door. Tom will anyway. Tom and Jerry will return.
Coming up next, it's Cow and Chicken, followed by Ed, Edd n Eddy on Cartoon Network.
We'll be right back with more Bugs and Lampy. No, that's Daffy! Daffy! You did that on purpose!
Coming up next, it's the Bugs and Daffy Show, followed by Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network.
George, I know Mr. Spacely yells at you a lot, and it can be upsetting, but did you ever think of his feelings? Me neither. What a grouch, huh? Now, back to the Flintstones. Hooray for Stone Age TV.
Gotham City is a playground to the vile criminal element. The playtime is over when Batman returns.
You're watching the Scooby Movies on Cartoon Network.
Don't go far. Mike Lewandog will be right back on Cartoon Network.
Now back to Top Cat on Cartoon Network. Why can't you ever solve mysteries in the daytime, Scooby? The dark is so scary.
Coming up next, it's Johnny Bravo, followed by Animaniacs on Cartoon Network.
If I were a Rubble, I would think seriously about removing the club from Bam Bam's hand. Just a thought.
Coming up next, it's Teen Titans, followed by Justice League on Cartoon Network.
Thank heaven for little girls. And little girls who can fly and shoot laser beams, that is. The Powerpuff Girls will return on Cartoon Network.
And now back to the Powerpuff Girls.
Don't look now, but Pebbles has egg on her face. No, literally, she has egg on her face. The Flintstones will be right back.
Welcome to the Hall of Justice. The Super Friends are back.
Garfield volverá enseguida. Odie necesita tiempo para encontrar un buen escondite. Garfield luce aburrido. ¡Corre, Odie!
Don't you think you should share with the green guy?
Have you seen this man? Yosemite Sam is wanted in 13 states for robbing banks, rustling cattle, and shooting dancing bunnies. Stay tuned for more details.
You're watching Bugs and Daffy on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Dexter's Laboratory, followed by Brack Presents The Brack Show starring Brack on Cartoon Network.
We now return to my sweet golden-haired daffodil, Dee Dee.
Coming up next, Super Chunk continues, followed by Cartoon Network, Cartoon Theater on Cartoon Network.
Evildoers, you can't escape the Batman. He's back.
Coming up next, it's Bugs and Daffy, followed by Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network.
I think I can. Come on, chicken, you can do it. Cowie chicken will be right back.
Coming up next, it's Dexter's Laboratory, followed by Baby Looney Tunes on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Cartoon, the Top 5, followed by Teen Titans on Cartoon Network.
Little girls that can fly and zip through the air? Why, that's crazy talk. Or is it? The Powerpuff Girls will return.
You're watching Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
Don't run away. Next, the Scrappy-Doo Marathon continues, followed by the Flintstones on Cartoon Network.
And now back to Tom and Jerry Kids.
Patience, my pet, patience. The show will be right back.
When we return, Boris and Natasha are reunited with their long-lost cousins, Gomez and Morticia. Keep it here for a very touching Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Now back to the show. Do you see how your patience paid off?
Coming up next, it's more Acme Hour, followed by Rocky and Bullwinkle on Cartoon Network.
We'll be right back with the Powerpuff Girls. We'll be right back with Ed, Ed, and Eddie.
Come back for more Commander Cool and Mellow Mutt and a pup named Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Cartoon Fridays, followed by Space Ghost Coast to Coast on Cartoon Network.
From the dark of the city night, he emerged. Batman is back on Cartoon Network.
And now, Huckhounds, Clementine.
Sam, I know you appreciate a good dancer, but I think flowers might express your feelings better than bullets. Bugs and Daffy will return.
Estamos de vuelta con Beetlejuice por Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's a pup named Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Dexter's Laboratory, followed by Codename Kids Next Door on Cartoon Network.
¿Viste el episodio en el que el auto de Pedro se descompuso? En realidad fue que se le fracturó un pie.
Square can't fit in a circle, Tom. Ouch! Back to the show.
Coming up next, it's Sitting Ducks, followed by Cartoon Theater on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's The Flintstones, followed by Bugs and Daffy on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Flintstones, followed by Ed, Ed, and Eddie on Cartoon Network.
You're
watching Cartoon Network. You're watching Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network. You're watching Cow and Chicken on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Scooby Movies, followed by the Bugs and Daffy Show on Cartoon Network.
Up next. Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the real adventures of Johnny Quest, followed by The Flintstones on Cartoon Network.
Rabbit, I tells you! He's crazy! The dog has lost his mind! Oh, he's stupid. Well, nobody told me. Two rabid, stupid dogs will be back.
Coming up next, it's Dexter's Laboratory, followed by Ed, and Eddie on Cartoon Network.
Now watch the replay here, Mike. He plucks the chicken and boom, there's the play! More CNC on the way.
Coming up next, it's the Gary Coleman Show, followed by the Super Globetrotters on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Gumby, followed by Hong Kong Phooey on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Acme Hour, followed by Captain Planet on Cartoon Network.
Tom and Jerry, the rivalry. Oh, man, did you see that? Oh, you just know he's going to feel that in the morning. Ouch.
Coming up next, it's Ed, Ed, and Eddie, followed by Duck Dodgers on Cartoon Network.
We're back, and just in time for rabbit and duck season.
Coming up next, it's Cow and Chicken, followed by Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Looney Tunes, followed by Duck Dodgers on Cartoon Network.
You know, Scooby, you just might be running around with the wrong kind of crowd. We'll be right back.
Coming up next, it's Tom and Jerry, followed by Boomerang on Cartoon Network.
More powerful than 10 locomotives. The Super Friends are back.
Estamos de volta com mais dos seus cartoons favoritos.
Okay, in one hand, I have nuts and berries. In the other, a juicy, mouth-watering cheeseburger. Now, do you understand Yogi's whole picnic basket thing?
Ed, you better not be taking a bath. You know it's not Saturday. Is it? We'll be back with more Ed, Ed, and Eddie on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Cartoon-a-Doodle-Doo, followed by Tom and Jerry Kids on Cartoon Network.
No, Jerry, I don't think you're being paranoid. Tom really is out to get you. Tom and Jerry will return.
Yosemite Sam and Bugs Bunny have been bitter rivals for years. It's nice to see them collaborating on something fun for once. Take a bow, Bugs.
En instantes, la hora Acme, seguido por el laboratorio de Dexter en Cartoon Network.
You're watching the Animaniacs on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Tom and Jerry, followed by Ed, Ed, and Eddie on Cartoon Network.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. And a little thing called Chemical X. The Powerpuff Girls will return on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Codename Kids Next Door, followed by Whatever Happened to Robot Jones on Cartoon Network.
It's the Powerpuff Girls, and it's a bunch of roaches. This is disgusting. Squash like a bug.
スイートミント、カートゥーンネットワークでこの後すぐ。
You're watching The Flintstones on Cartoon Network.
Patience, my pup, patience. The show will be right back.
And now Double D removes his hat. Major look!
Coming up next, it's Bugs and Daffy, followed by SWAT Cats on Cartoon Network. Watch as the coaster goes round and round and it comes out here.
Coming up next, it's Animaniacs, followed by Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? On Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Bugs and Daffy Show, followed by Batman on Cartoon Network. When we last left the gang, they were hanging from a rope over ferocious crocodiles, and Shaggy has the giggles. Shaggy's about to learn an important lesson. Reptiles are not funny.
I will return after I perfect my ingenious laugh.
Coming up next, it's Tom and Jerry, followed by the Acme Hour on Cartoon Network. You're watching The Jetsons on Cartoon Network.
Alfred, ready to the Batmobile. Batman is back on Cartoon Network.
Sylvester, you ingenious. Oh! Back to the show.
Coming up next, it's the Animaniacs, followed by Batman on Cartoon Network.
You'd think that Tom would learn that running full speed through a fence would do permanent damage. Yow! Now that's a dicey situation. Tom and Jerry will be right back.
Coming up next, it's the Tex Avery Show, followed by Toonheads on Cartoon Network.
La vaca aterrizó demasiado duro sobre Pollito y lo aplanó. Necesitamos un descanso para inflarlo. Chicos, no traten de hacer esto en casa.
You're back with Bugs and Daffy, unless you took a left turn at Albuquerque.
Equipment, 3,000. Repairs, 2,000. Blasting a giant octopus to smithereens, priceless.
Were we just here a minute ago? I feel familiar.
Now, back to... Whoa! I forgot she could do that.
Hey, Shaggy, dude, I think that Velma kind of likes you. Wise up, man, and stop hanging out with dogs. Girls kiss better. Scooby-Doo will be right back.
You are watching Batman on Cartoon Network.
Now back to more Bugs and Daffy on Cartoon Network.
We'll be right back with Freakazoid.
always in the air. So whatever you do, stand upwind. Stay tuned. More Bugs and Daffy headed your way.
We'll be right back with Tom and Jerry.
Coming up next, it's I Am Weasel, followed by the What a Cartoon Show on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Followed by Cartoon Friday on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Tiny Toons, followed by a pup named Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
And now the spring fowl first attempts flight. Only the cool hoof of nature from a nearby herd forces a commercial break.
Coming up next, it's Baby Looney Tunes, followed by Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries on Cartoon Network.
But what's in it for me?
Sand in the clouds. Sorry, I just love show tunes. Oh, a pup named Scooby-Doo will be right back.
Coming up next, it's Cartoon Theater, followed by a pup named Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
Next up, it's Tom and Jerry Kids, followed by the Flintstones on Cartoon Network.
Precious little Bubbles. She works so hard. Oh boy, don't do it! I'm telling the professor!
Coming up next, it's the Jetsons, followed by Scooby Movies on Cartoon Network.
Daqui a pouco, Cartoons. E em seguida, a Hora Acme.
You're watching the Jetsons here on Cartoon Network.
En instantes, Bugs Bunny y el Pato Lucas, seguido por Tom y Jerry.
And now, the Popeye Show.
Coming up next, it's Captain Planet, followed by Boomerang on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Followed by a pup named Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
Now, back to the action.
Coming up next, it's Ed, Ed, and Eddie, followed by Cow and Chicken on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
Those zany to the max Animaniacs are back on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Ed, Ed, and Eddie, followed by the Powerpuff Girls on Cartoon Network. You're watching the Flintstones on Cartoon Network.
Look, Cal, Chicken's trying to fly. Why don't you give your brother a hand? There you go.
Coming up next, it's Brack presents The Brack Show starring Brack, followed by Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network.
The Scooby movies will return in a moment. Shaggy decided he had to make a few of his own script revisions. Prima donnas.
And now back to Cow and Chicken.
Hey, look, Fred's washing his car with the shower. Now back to the Flintstones.
Dogs hate cats, cats hate mice. That's a vicious cycle. Can't we all just get along? Stay tuned for more Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Space Ghost Coast to Coast, followed by Gumby on Cartoon Network. You're watching Bugs and Daffy on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, Super Friends continues, followed by Mysteries Inc. Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Bugs and Daffy Show, followed by Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network.
And now, back to Bugs and Daffy.
Evildoers, you can't escape the Batman. He's back.
Sylvester, have Granny open up a can of tuna for you instead, okay?
The Dark Knight will return on Cartoon Network.
Ingredients of one Scooby snack, whole flour, and a whole bunch of calories.
Coming up next, it's Cow and Chicken, followed by the new Scooby movie on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Cartoon Show, followed by Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
I am tired of the last scene. I am needing short break for being rested. I am taking breaks now. See you in a little.
When we get back from where we are going back where we were. I know people there.
Coming up next, it's more of the Scooby Block, followed by Super Chunk on Cartoon Network.
The Popeye Show will be right back on Cartoon Network.
Hello. You are watching Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
You're watching Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy, followed by Ed, Ed, and Eddie on Cartoon Network.
Batman has disappeared into the darkness to right another wrong. But he will return soon on Cartoon Network.
admit those canker girls look a lot better with those female decorations. Goodness knows they can't look any worse.
Coming up next, it's Toonami on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Cow and Chicken, followed by Batman on Cartoon Network.
Join the club! Get it? Join the club? Okay, back to the show.
Admit it, you missed us. Okay, I'll give you a quarter.
Enemies united in their love for fine dairy products. Tom and Jerry are back.
You're watching Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
En instantes, Ginny.
Coming up next, the Tom and Jerry Slam Fest continues, followed by Toonami on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Scooby Movies, followed by the Acme Hour on Cartoon Network.
Bruce Wayne has to take care of some business, but Batman will be back.
I'm smarter than Dexter, and this show should rightfully be called Mandark's Laboratory. We will return to Mandark's Laboratory on Cartoon Network. Ha 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 ha!
Coming up next, it's Dexter's Lab, followed by Space Ghost Coast to Coast on Cartoon Network. You're watching The Flintstones on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Johnny Bravo, followed by Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
En instantes, los verdaderos cazafantasmas.
All aboard! There's more Cartoon Network on the way.
This program brought to you by Captain Crunch Cereal.